Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine this. You've spent years building a life with someone, trusting them with your heart, your dreams, your everything. And then, in one cold, heartless moment, everything is ripped away from you. The person you trusted most betrays you in the worst way possible. And it's not just about money or power. It's about something much deeper, something you didn't see coming. What would you do if you found out your sister was the one who took everything you had left? Stay with me, because this story will make you question what you know about trust, love, and family. And by the end, you'll be wondering how far you would go to reclaim your own truth. Now, let's begin. The first time Maya heard the words, it felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled away. The lawyer's voice rang clear and cold in the otherwise silent room, but it was the content that struck her like a sledgehammer. The entirety of Jake Thorne's estate, including all business assets, real estate, and financial holdings, has been bequeathed to Taylor Thorne. She had to have heard him wrong. She blinked, trying to clear the fog in her mind, but the truth came crashing down, heavy and undeniable. Taylor, her older sister, the one who had always been just a little too perfect, just a little too polished, had inherited it all. Every scrap of what they had built together, Jake's boutique design business, their home, their future, was now hers. Maya's life, it seemed, was no longer hers to live. Her hands, cold and trembling, instinctively sought Taylor's for comfort, but all she could feel was the faint, rehearsed tremor of her sister's grip. Maya's throat tightened. She couldn't speak. Her body, as though rejecting the reality unfolding before her, refused to cooperate. The lawyer, Mr. Lawson, flipped through the pages in his hands, eyes focused on his task, but Maya couldn't tear her gaze from Taylor. Her sister's eyes were already welling up with tears, the kind that seemed perfectly crafted, fragile, glassy, like some tragic heroine in a play. "I didn't know, Maya," Taylor whispered, her voice almost a whimper. It was meant to sound sympathetic, but Maya couldn't ignore the fleeting, calculating look that flashed across Taylor's face before she resumed her act of heartbreak. Maya didn't respond. She couldn't. It was as if her voice had been stolen. She just sat there, frozen in that moment, her mind swirling with 1,000 questions. How? Why? Why her? These were the only words that circled in her head. But no matter how hard she tried, her tongue felt too thick to speak. This couldn't be real, could it? This was a mistake. A cruel joke, perhaps. But the weight of the silence in the room, the way the air seemed to press in around her, told her otherwise. It wasn't until Taylor's hand brushed away a tear from her cheek, the perfect picture of a woman who had just lost everything, that something inside Maya snapped. There was something off about this. Maya could feel it deep in her gut, a knot tightening with each passing second. Taylor wasn't crying in shock. She was crying in relief. In that brief, fleeting moment, Maya saw it. Taylor knew what was coming. She had been waiting for this. And that's when Maya remembered the envelope. Jake had given it to her just days before he passed. His voice still echoed in her mind, the words he spoke with such intense sincerity. "Open this only if something doesn't feel right." Well, everything about this felt wrong. Maya's fingers twitched. She could feel the envelope sitting in her bag, tucked away and sealed with Jake's initials, just as he had given it to her. "Maya?" Taylor's voice snapped her out of her thoughts, her tone sweet, almost too sweet. She was staring at Maya, the image of concern that Maya no longer believed for a second. "Are you okay?" Maya didn't answer. She stood slowly, her legs shaky but determined. Mr. Lawson raised his eyebrows, a silent question in his gaze. Taylor's smile faltered just a fraction, like a mask slipping. "I think there's something else," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Jake left something for me. He said, 'Open it only if something doesn't feel right.'" She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. Taylor's gaze shot to it in an instant, her lips curling ever so slightly in frustration, but Maya didn't look away. She placed the envelope on the polished oak table in front of Mr. Lawson, the wax seal gleaming under the soft light. A chilling silence fell. Mr. Lawson glanced between the envelope and Maya. He hesitated, his fingers brushing the wax seal as though it were fragile, dangerous. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "Where did this come from?" "Jake gave it to me," Maya said, her throat tight. 3 days before he passed, he said, "Only open it if something doesn't feel right." Taylor's breath caught. It was barely audible, but it was there, sharp and quick, as if she had just realized her carefully laid plans were about to unravel. But she kept her smile frozen, just for a moment longer. Mr. Lawson took the envelope in his hands, carefully breaking the seal. The soft snap of the wax breaking made Maya's whole body tense. She couldn't look away. She was already bracing herself for what was inside. As Mr. Lawson unfolded the papers inside, his eyes scanned the text, his brows furrowing as he read. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. The truth was about to come to light. When Mr. Lawson finally looked up, his expression had changed. Gone was the detached professionalism. In its place was something softer, something closer to sympathy. "Maya, this document, it's an amendment to Jake's will," he said slowly. "It overrides the original." Maya blinked, her breath catching. "Overrides?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Lawson nodded. "It's legally binding and it's clear. Jake left everything to you, Maya." The words hit Maya like a tidal wave. For a moment, she couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. All of it, the house, the business, the life they had built together, was hers. It was no longer Taylor's, but it wasn't the money or the house that made her chest tighten. It was the finality of Jake's decision. He had seen through Taylor. He had known her for what she truly was. Taylor's face shifted instantly. No more tears, no more grief. Just rage. Her eyes burned with fury, her breath shallow. "This isn't possible," she spat, her voice cold. "You're really going to trust a dying man's last-minute change of heart over a legal document?" Maya's eyes locked with her sister's. "The will you convinced him to sign while he could barely think straight," she said quietly, the words hitting hard. "The one you helped him draft while I was out filling prescriptions?" Taylor's face twisted with rage. "You don't understand what he wanted," she hissed. "He needed someone who could take control, someone with vision." Maya didn't flinch. "No, he needed someone he could trust, and that wasn't you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Taylor stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't say anything. She just left, her footsteps echoing in the hallway as if marking the end of everything. Maya sat back down, feeling the weight of everything shift. The truth, Jake's final gift, was hers to carry now. She looked at the envelope in front of her, the weight of it heavy, but no longer unbearable. The room was quiet now. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long time, Maya could breathe. Have you ever had someone close to you betray your trust in ways you never imagined? How did you handle the aftermath? Do you think trust can truly be rebuilt once it's broken, or is it forever shattered? What Maya didn't know was that the truth was only the beginning. As she sat there, she felt something else stirring deep inside, a fire that had been lit long ago, now ready to burn everything she thought she knew. It was time to take back her life, but the hardest battles were yet to come. Would she be able to move forward and rebuild from the ashes? Or would the past drag her back, dragging everything down with it? Maya sat there in the silence, feeling the weight of the moment press down on her chest. The lawyer, Mr. Lawson, had already packed up the documents and was making polite, measured small talk about the legal process, but her mind was elsewhere. The weight of Jake's final words, his trust, his protection, felt like a heavy cloak wrapped around her shoulders, one she was still learning to carry. It was as though every ounce of clarity Jake had left her was now her responsibility to uphold, and yet it also felt like a shackle. Taylor's departure echoed in the quiet room, but Maya didn't look at the door. She didn't want to. She felt too raw, too exposed. She had waited her whole life for a moment like this, for a vindication she could never have imagined. And yet here it was. Her sister's betrayal laid bare, her husband's last stand, and all the shattered pieces of a life she had spent years building with someone she had trusted. Everything had changed in an instant. She rose from the chair, a slow, deliberate movement that felt like the weight of the world was pushing her back down. The envelope in front of her, the one sealed with Jake's initials, the one she had carried with her since the night he gave it to her, seemed so much more than just paper. It was proof. Proof of the man she had loved, the one she had thought she knew, the one who had made the mistake of trusting Taylor, and the one who, at the end, had found the clarity to correct it. But as she reached for the envelope, her fingers paused. Something tugged at her chest, an uncomfortable nagging sensation. The truth, as liberating as it was, felt incomplete. She could feel the emptiness, the absence of Jake, the very core of her world crumbling like a house of cards. He was gone, and even though she now had what he left behind, she knew there would be no replacing him. There was no closure in that. Her eyes landed on the window. The city sprawled out before her, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, but it all felt so distant, so cold. The thought of moving on felt impossible. How could she ever move on? From him, from the life they had shared, from everything she had trusted. And then she heard the faintest sound, a knock on the door. It was a soft tap, but it felt as loud as a drumbeat in the silence that had swallowed her whole. She didn't want to answer it, didn't want to face anyone. Not yet. But the knock persisted. It wasn't a question, it was a demand. Her heart clenched. She knew who it was before the door even opened. When it creaked open, there stood Taylor. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable, but Maya could see the storm in her eyes, the mix of fury, fear, and desperation that always simmered beneath her polished exterior. "Maya," Taylor said, her voice soft but sharp with an edge Maya hadn't heard in years. "I need to talk to you." Maya didn't speak at first. She couldn't. Her body tensed, as though bracing for another blow. What more was there to say? But Taylor didn't wait for permission. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her with a soft click. There was no room for pretense now. Maya was already in the thick of it. "You have no idea what this is doing to me," Taylor continued, her voice cracking ever so slightly. She walked toward Maya, every step deliberate, but Maya stood firm. Her eyes stayed cold, fixed on her sister. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to take everything from you?" Maya didn't answer. She wasn't sure what to say. It was all too much. She was too tired, too numb. Taylor continued, her words coming faster now, tinged with panic. "Jake, he was so sick, Maya. He couldn't think. He didn't know what he was doing when he signed that new will. I tried to help you." Her voice faltered. "I was helping you. I was protecting you." Maya's pulse quickened at the sound of those words. She had heard this before. She had been told this story. It was always the same narrative Taylor spun. Always about helping, about protecting. But Maya had seen through it, hadn't she? She had always seen it, even when she couldn't admit it to herself. Taylor had never been about helping. It was always about controlling. "No, Taylor," Maya finally said, her voice firm. "You weren't protecting me. You were taking everything from me. From both of us." Her chest tightened, and for the first time in days, Maya let herself feel the full weight of her own anger. It surged through her like a flood. "You took advantage of Jake when he was weak. When he needed someone who could see him for who he was, you saw an opportunity, and you seized it." Taylor recoiled as if the words had struck her. Her eyes flashed with something Maya couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe. But then it passed, like a flicker of doubt in the face of her certainty. "You don't understand," she muttered, voice barely above a whisper. "You never understood him the way I did." The words stung. Maya could feel them wrapping themselves around her heart like a vice. Her pulse raced, and in that moment, something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to let Taylor twist the truth anymore. "I knew him," Maya said quietly, her voice unwavering now. "I knew him better than you ever did. And when you finally showed your true colors, when he saw you for what you really are, he left you with nothing. Because he knew." Taylor's eyes hardened, and she took a step back, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. Maya knew her sister was unraveling. She had seen it before, the cracks in the armor, the walls coming down. But this time, Maya wasn't afraid of it. She wasn't afraid of Taylor anymore. In the silence that followed, Maya reached for the envelope again. She held it in her hands, feeling the cool, weighty seal. The truth was no longer just an idea. It was hers to carry, hers to own. There was no going back now. "I'm done," Maya said, her voice steady and calm. "And you should be too." Taylor didn't say another word. She turned on her heel and walked out of the room, the door closing softly behind her. The echo of her departure was the loudest thing Maya had ever heard. What would you do if you found out that someone you trusted had been deceiving you all along? How far would you go to claim what's rightfully yours? The weight of Maya's words hung in the air, but as the door clicked shut, another weight settled on her shoulders, one that felt heavier than any burden she had carried before. The battle was far from over. The truth was just the beginning. The days after Taylor's departure were quiet. Too quiet, Maya thought, as she sat in the stillness of their old home, surrounded by the remnants of a life that once felt like a dream. The air was thick with grief, but it wasn't the kind she had expected. It wasn't the raw, uncontained sorrow of losing Jake. That had already happened. What remained now was something different, a mix of relief and guilt, like standing at the edge of a precipice and knowing you have to jump, even though you're terrified. Maya had thought that the truth would bring her peace, but instead, it brought uncertainty. The papers, the will, the truth about Taylor, they had all been revealed, but the aftermath felt more complicated than she could have ever imagined. There was no joy in winning, no triumph in seeing Taylor's plans crumble. Instead, there was just a void, a hollow space that Jake's absence had left behind. She had started to rebuild, slowly at first, with small steps. The business, now officially hers, had been her anchor. She had changed the name from Juniper and Brass to Maya Design Studio, and though it felt like a small act of defiance against the life she had shared with Jake, it also felt right. But even as she updated the company's website, reorganized files, and called back old clients, she could feel the weight of the envelope Jake had left for her. The final letter, sitting on her desk like a reminder that the battle wasn't over yet. She had read it countless times, trying to understand it, trying to find some sense of closure in his words. But each time she read it, she felt more lost. He had apologized. He had acknowledged his mistake, his failure in trusting Taylor. But there was one sentence that still echoed in her mind, haunting her with its simplicity. "I am sorry, Maya. I failed you, but please don't let her win." Let her win. Maya had no idea what that meant. It wasn't about the money, not really. It wasn't about the house or the business. It was about something deeper, something more fragile. Trust, betrayal, the fragile nature of human connection. Maya hadn't spoken to Taylor since that day in the office, and she didn't want to. She was done with her sister's games, done with the facade of sympathy and manipulation. But something in the pit of her stomach told her that Taylor wasn't done with her, that she hadn't given up on taking everything back. And Maya couldn't shake the feeling that another confrontation was inevitable. It came sooner than she expected. One afternoon, as Maya sat in her studio working on a new design concept, the doorbell rang. It was strange. Maya rarely had unexpected visitors, especially not after everything that had happened. She glanced at the clock. No one came by unannounced. With a sigh, she stood up and walked to the door. When she opened it, she found Taylor standing there, her expression unreadable, but her posture rigid, as if bracing herself for a battle. "Maya," Taylor said, her voice steady but lacking the warmth it once had. "I need to talk to you." Maya crossed her arms. She had no interest in hearing what Taylor had to say, but she knew deep down that this conversation was inevitable. She couldn't keep running from it forever. "Come in," Maya said, stepping aside reluctantly. Taylor walked past her, the familiar scent of her perfume filling the air. It hit Maya like a wave of memories. Long summer afternoons, laughter shared over glasses of wine, the feeling of security that had once been so complete. But those days were gone now, and all Maya felt was a coldness in her chest as she closed the door behind them. "What do you want, Taylor?" Maya asked, her voice quiet but firm. Taylor turned to face her. and for a moment there was nothing but silence. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke. I came to apologize, Taylor said. Not for what I did. I'll never apologize for that. But for what I took from you. I took advantage of a situation, Maya, and I knew I was wrong. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to understand. I was scared. I was scared of losing everything. And Jake, he was slipping away from both of us, and I couldn't stand it. Maya listened, her heart heavy with a mixture of emotions. She had always known Taylor had been afraid. Fear had driven so many of her actions, the need for control, the desperate desire to always be the one in charge. But fear wasn't an excuse. Not anymore. You never cared about me, Maya said, her voice breaking through the quiet tension. You never cared about Jake the way I did. You were only in it for yourself. And you're still doing it, Taylor. You're still trying to take what's mine. Taylor flinched at the words, but she didn't back down. I never wanted to hurt you, Maya. I just didn't know how to live without him, without being in control. I thought I could fix things. I thought I could protect you. Maya shook her head. You don't get it. You never did. You can't protect someone by taking everything from them. You didn't protect me, Taylor. You destroyed me. The room fell silent. The weight of the words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. And for the first time since all of this had started, Maya realized something. She didn't need Taylor's apology. She didn't need her to admit her mistakes or beg for forgiveness. She had already forgiven her, not because Taylor deserved it, but because Maya needed to move on. She needed to let go. I don't need you in my life anymore, Maya said, her voice steady. You've already taken enough from me. I'm done. Taylor's eyes widened, as if the words were a physical blow. But there was something else in her gaze, too. Something raw, something vulnerable that Maya hadn't seen in years. Taylor took a step back, then another, and without a word, she turned and left the studio. Maya watched her go, the weight in her chest lifting slightly as the door clicked shut behind her. She felt free, finally free of the lies, the betrayal, and the suffocating fear that had haunted her for so long. But there was still one thing left to do. Maya sat back down at her desk, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked up the envelope Jake had left for her. She opened it once more, reading his final words, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. I'm sorry, Maya, but please, don't let her win. Jake's voice echoed in her mind, but this time it didn't bring pain. It brought peace. Maya had won, not because she had taken everything back, but because she had finally taken control of her own story. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you in such a deep way? How do you find the strength to move on? If you've made it this far, leave a 100 in the comments if you've been moved by Maya's journey. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, and thank you for watching Life Stories.